Nobody asks their Uber driver about the medical textbooks on the dashboard. Most passengers just assume, scroll their phones, or fall asleep. But Jennifer Chen was curious, and that curiosity led her to uncover the most heartbreaking secret in her city. A brilliant surgeon forced to hide his life-saving skills behind a steering wheel, one ride at a time. Welcome to Hidden Legends. Before we begin this story that will leave you looking at every service worker differently, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe some dreams are worth fighting for no matter the cost, hit that subscribe button. Because what you're about to learn about David will change your perspective forever. But first, you need to understand why a brilliant surgeon was driving strangers around at midnight instead of saving lives in an operating room. The notification lit up David Richardson's phone at 11:47 p.m., another ride request. He glanced at the pickup location, University Medical Library, and accepted it without hesitation. Every fare mattered, every dollar counted. In 6 hours, he'd be sitting in his own medical school lecture, trying to stay awake after another sleepless night behind the wheel. David adjusted the stack of textbooks on his dashboard, making sure they wouldn't slide when he turned corners. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was studying the same procedures he'd performed hundreds of times at Cleveland General Hospital, relearning everything he already knew, because his 15 years of surgical experience meant nothing without completing the entire American medical education system again. His phone buzzed again. The passenger had updated their destination. Good. It was a longer ride, which meant more money toward this month's tuition payment. Jennifer Chen was exhausted. She'd been in the medical library for 8 straight hours, cramming for her MCAT exam. As a senior pre-med student, she thought she understood what sacrifice looked like. Late nights, endless studying, living on coffee and determination. But when she opened the door of the silver Camry, she realized she had no idea what real sacrifice actually meant. "Hi, Jennifer?" David asked, his voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who hadn't slept properly in months. "Yes, that's me." She slid into the back seat, immediately noticing the medical books. "Sorry, I just couldn't help but notice. Are you a medical student too?" David glanced at her in the rearview mirror. He got this question sometimes. How he answered depended on how tired he was, how much hope he had left that particular day. "Something like that," he said quietly. But Jennifer wasn't satisfied with vague answers. She was always curious. It's what made her want to become a doctor in the first place. And something about those books bothered her. They weren't basic textbooks. These were advanced, specialized, expensive. "What year are you?" "I'm about to take my MCAT for the 3rd time. These books look like they're way beyond anything I'm studying." David stopped at a red light and turned slightly to look at her. She seemed genuinely interested, not just making small talk. Most passengers either stayed on their phones or fell asleep. Few ever asked about the books. Fewer still noticed what kind of books they were. "I'm in my 2nd year," he said, which was technically true. "And you?" "Medical school as well?" "Pre-med still, hoping to get in next year if I can finally nail this test." She leaned forward slightly, studying the titles more carefully. "Mind if I ask where you're studying?" "I've been looking at programs around here." The light turned green. David focused on the road, buying himself time to think. He'd learned to be careful about sharing too much. People either looked at him with pity, which he couldn't stand, or with confusion, wondering why someone would willingly restart their medical career in their late 30s. "City Medical," he said simply. It was where he'd been accepted after 2 years of taking prerequisite classes he'd already mastered, proving his commitment to starting over and jumping through administrative hoops that seemed designed to test persistence rather than knowledge. "Oh, wow, that's a really good program. Competitive, too." Jennifer paused, her eyes still on the books. Something was nagging at her. "Those look like attending-level textbooks. Are you doing research or something?" Something in her voice, the genuine admiration, the assumption that he belonged there, made David's chest tighten. When was the last time someone had talked to him like he was a real medical student, not just someone making a questionable life choice in his late 30s? But there was something else in her question. Intelligence. She'd recognized that these weren't student books. She was asking the right questions, the kind that meant she actually understood medical education. Cardiovascular surgery, he admitted. It's what I... He stopped himself before saying, what I used to do. It's what I want to focus on. That's incredible. I can't even imagine how challenging that must be. I mean, I'm struggling with basic organic chemistry, and you're already thinking about heart surgery. She paused. But wait, second-year students don't usually have surgical textbooks, and these look like... She squinted at one of the spines. This is a post-residency level text. I know because my advisor has the same book. The questions were getting too specific, too smart. David could feel the conversation heading toward territory he wasn't sure he wanted to explore with a stranger. But Jennifer's curiosity wasn't malicious. It was the kind of investigative mind that would make her a good doctor someday. It's complicated, he said finally. But Jennifer had already put together too many pieces. The advanced books, the careful way he'd avoided direct answers, the precision in his movements. She'd noticed that too, the way his hands moved with practiced economy, like someone accustomed to detailed life-or-death work. You weren't always a student here, were you? She asked quietly. Were you a doctor before? The question hung in the air between them. David had been asked this before, usually by other people who recognized the familiar pattern of someone working a job far below their qualifications, but never by someone like Jennifer, young, just starting her journey, probably never having to question whether her chosen path would lead where she wanted to go. He could deflect again, change the subject, keep the conversation light until he dropped her off and never saw her again. But something about her genuine curiosity, her obvious respect for medical education, made him want to tell the truth for once. Yes, he said simply. I was a cardiovascular surgeon at Cleveland General Hospital for 15 years. Jennifer felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. 15 years? But you're... 39, David finished. I started young. Finished my residency at 29, attending surgeon by 31. The math hit Jennifer like a physical blow. Oh my God, you were performing heart surgery while I was in middle school. David almost smiled at that. Probably, yes. So why are you... She gestured around the car, trying to find a polite way to ask why a heart surgeon was driving Uber at midnight on a Tuesday. Starting over, David said. I burned out, badly. The pressure, the malpractice insurance, the hospital politics, the 100-hour weeks. I had a breakdown 3 years ago, lost my medical license temporarily. When I got my life back together, I realized I wanted to do medicine differently. But that meant starting the whole process over. Starting over completely? I could have fought to get my license reinstated, gone back to the same high-pressure environment that nearly destroyed me. Instead, I chose to go back to medical school, relearn medicine with a focus on patient care rather than profit margins. It means 7 more years of training, but I'll come out as the kind of doctor I actually want to be. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. She'd been stressed about taking the MCAT for the 3rd time, worried about the competitiveness of medical school. She couldn't imagine voluntarily giving up a successful surgical career to start over, especially at 39. That's incredibly brave, she said finally. You gave up everything to become the doctor you wanted to be. I gave up a life that was killing me, David corrected. But yes, I suppose it was brave, or stupid. Some days I'm not sure which. The weight of that statement settled between them. Jennifer stared out the window, trying to process what she'd learned. Every few minutes she'd glance at the medical textbooks, now seeing them completely differently. These weren't just study materials. They were the bridge between who David had been and who he was becoming. How do you do it financially? She asked eventually. I mean, medical school is expensive, and if you're driving Uber... I drive 4 nights a week, sometimes 5 if I need extra money. I sold my house, moved to a small apartment. My ex-wife gets alimony, which she deserves. She supported me through my first round of medical training and residency. I live very simply now. Rice, beans, whatever's on sale. Most of my income goes to tuition and basic living expenses. That sounds incredibly difficult. It is, but it's also liberating. I know exactly why I'm doing this now. Before I was just following the path that was expected of me. Now I'm choosing it. Jennifer couldn't speak. The scale of sacrifice was beyond anything she'd imagined, but it was a different kind of sacrifice than she'd expected. This wasn't someone forced into a bad situation. This was someone who'd made an incredibly difficult choice to align their life with their values. "How much longer until you graduate?" she asked. "2 more years of medical school, then another 5 years of residency. I'll be 46 when I finish my second cardiovascular surgery residency." "Will you do the same specialty?" "Yes, but differently. I want to work in community hospitals, safety net facilities, places where the focus is on healing people, not maximizing profit per procedure." Jennifer thought about her own motivations for becoming a doctor, her dreams of prestige and financial security. David had achieved all of that and walked away from it to pursue something more meaningful. "What keeps you going on the hard days?" David was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a conviction that made Jennifer understand this was the core of everything. 3 years ago, when I was at my lowest point, I realized I hadn't actually helped a patient, really helped them, in years. I was performing procedures, sure, but I'd lost the connection to why I became a doctor in the first place. Now, even as a student again, I feel that connection returning. That's what keeps me going. Jennifer realized she was crying. Not from sadness, but from a kind of awe. She'd been worried about whether she was smart enough, dedicated enough, worthy enough to become a doctor. David had shown her what real dedication looked like. "I'm amazed by what you're doing," she said, "and inspired." "Don't be amazed," David said. "Be intentional. You have the chance to become the doctor you want to be from the beginning. I had to tear down everything and rebuild it. You get to build it right the first time." They were approaching her building now. Jennifer didn't want the ride to end. She felt like she was learning more about medicine, about life, about purpose in this 20-minute car ride than she had in months of pre-med classes. "Can I ask you one more thing?" she said as David pulled up to her address. "Of course. Do you ever regret it, giving up everything you'd built?" David turned off the car and faced her directly for the first time during the ride. His eyes were tired but clear, and Jennifer could see in them the peace that came from making a difficult but right decision. "Never," he said without hesitation. "I regret how long it took me to make the choice, but I've never regretted the choice itself." Jennifer understood then that David wasn't just rebuilding his career. He was rebuilding his entire relationship with medicine, choosing purpose over prestige, meaning over money. "Thank you," she said as she gathered her things. "Not just for the ride, for showing me what it really means to choose medicine as a calling." "Good luck on your MCAT," David said. "And remember, becoming a doctor isn't about proving you're smart enough. It's about proving you care enough." Jennifer got out of the car but lingered by the window. An idea was forming, something that felt important. "David, would you be willing to speak to my pre-med group sometime about choosing medicine for the right reasons? I think we need to hear your perspective." David considered this. He'd been so focused on his own journey that he hadn't thought about how his experience might help others. "I'd like that," he said. "Here's my number," Jennifer said, writing it on a piece of paper. "When you're ready." After Jennifer disappeared into her building, David sat in his car for a few minutes before accepting his next ride request. He looked at the medical textbooks on his dashboard, then at the piece of paper with Jennifer's number. For the first time in months, he felt like his story mattered to someone other than himself. His phone buzzed. Another ride request. David started the car and headed toward the pickup location, but something had shifted during that conversation with Jennifer. The isolation he'd been feeling, the sense that no one understood why he'd made such a dramatic life change, felt a little less heavy. 6 months later, David became a regular speaker at pre-med orientation sessions, sharing his story about choosing purpose over prestige. His talks became legendary among students for their honesty about the realities of medical practice and the importance of maintaining perspective on why they wanted to become doctors. Jennifer passed her MCAT on the 4th try and was accepted into City Medical's program, the same school where David is now in his final year. Sometimes they study together in the library, discussing not just medical facts, but the philosophy of healing. And when David returns to surgery next year, he'll do so with a clarity of purpose he never had before. The years of driving Uber, of living simply, of reconnecting with his motivations, taught him lessons that his first medical education never could. The next time you get into a rideshare, look around, pay attention, ask questions. The person driving you might be on a journey more courageous than you can imagine, pursuing dreams that would inspire you if you knew their story. Hidden legends don't always wear scrubs in prestigious hospitals. Sometimes they wear the uniform of humility, driving us safely home while rebuilding their lives one choice at a time. Have you ever met someone who gave up everything to pursue their true calling? Share their story in the comments and tell us what city you're watching from. Subscribe to Hidden Legends for more stories about the extraordinary courage it takes to live an authentic life. Because David's story reminds us that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're on the wrong path and have the courage to start over.